Hello, friends. Today we have a story without superpowers, but with pure, unfiltered madness. The Joker, fresh out of Arkham, is back to reclaim Gotham, and standing in his way is the city's entire underworld. Alongside him is Johnny Frost, an ordinary guy who dared to dance with chaos. Find out what happens when you bet on the Joker. Love comics? Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a new story and stay in the loop with all the action. And now, let's get started. Gotham, a city where darkness is so thick that light barely pierces through. It's a place where the cold and hopeless find refuge under bridges, where anger and despair spill over in bars, and where the alleys offer anything your heart desires, if you know who to pay. The news of the Joker's imminent release quickly became a citywide sensation. Rumors spread like a plague, from dark alleys to nightclubs, through back rooms where everything is for sale, to confessionals where desires come with a price. No one quite believed it, but everyone knew, if it were true, Gotham was about to face a new wave of madness. Johnny Frost was one of those who heard the whispers. He was a small-time crook, one of those who wouldn't be remembered even if he ended up dead. But he had a dream. He wanted to climb to the top of Gotham's criminal ladder, and he decided that his only chance to do so was to bet on the most dangerous man in the city, the Joker. Johnny was the one who met the Joker at the gates of Arkham on the day of his unexpected release. He arrived in an old car, wiping his sweaty palms, trying not to show his nerves. Then the gates opened. The Joker stepped out like a king returning to his domain. With a smile that sent chills down the spine, he seemed to tease the very night, greeting it. This man was charismatic, terrifying, and utterly unpredictable. Johnny knew the game had begun and the stakes were high. When Johnny Frost first laid eyes on the Joker, he expected to see a desperate madman, but instead he found a man with a devilish grin, exuding extreme confidence. The Joker was calm and composed, as if he knew something that the rest of the city didn't. He walked out of Arkham Asylum like a king returning to his kingdom, ready to ignite the flames of chaos once more. To Johnny, it seemed he was nothing more than a tool for the Joker, a small pawn on the chessboard. But the Joker saw something more in him, either potential that he could exploit, or simply a new toy to play with for his own amusement. The slaughterhouse where Killer Croc resided sent chills down the spine. Once a place for cutting and processing meat, it had become a grim sanctuary, a refuge where one could hide from prying eyes and wait out any trouble. As they stepped inside, Croc's massive figure emerged from the shadows like a monster out of a nightmare. His yellow eyes fixed coldly on the Joker, calculating how long it might take to tear him apart. He was powerful and dangerous, and his presence made Johnny instinctively want to back away. But the Joker didn't seem to care. He stepped forward and grinned, greeting an old acquaintance. Croc welcomed the Joker with indifference. He casually suggested a card game, but the Joker merely smirked and turned out his empty pockets. "Broke, my friend," he said with a light sigh, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. And in a way, it was. While the Joker was locked up in Arkham, his underlings had deserted him, and the city's crime bosses had torn his empire apart. But this didn't trouble him. If anything, it amused him. Even without money or allies, he was still the Joker. At first, Croc remained unmoved by the Joker's jokes, but gradually his icy demeanor began to melt. The crude humor, the reckless confidence with which the Joker spoke of his plans, managed to catch his interest. Croc understood that the Joker was the only one who could brazenly declare his intentions without fearing the consequences. It was impressive, even admirable. Soon Croc began to feel the old sense of loyalty stirring, and his grim expression softened. This hulking mass of muscle and power, a figure of fear and terror, once again stood by the Joker's side. With Croc's support and the strength of his thugs, the Joker could now set his plan to reclaim control over Gotham into motion. For Johnny Frost, this was more than just a lucky turn of events. He saw how skillfully the Joker played with the situation, and felt that he too could be part of this game. The strip club was soaked in an atmosphere of cheap glamour and thick tobacco smoke. The Joker and Johnny walked in as if they owned the place, their entrance catching the attention of everyone who had even a hint of memory of the Joker's past reputation. Whispers swept through the bar as they noticed his wide grin and unshakable confidence. He was back. Monty, one of the Joker's former henchmen, felt as if a death sentence had been passed on him. When the Joker slowly approached, there was a flash of desperation in Monty's eyes. He forced a strained smile and hurriedly offered his boss a drink to celebrate his return. There was fear behind that offer, the fear of being punished for his betrayal, for siding with the new power in the city after the Joker had been sent to Arkham Asylum. Seeing right through this feigned hospitality, the Joker simply smirked. "Why not?" he said, flashing a wide smile. Soon enough, the bar transformed into a scene of utter debauchery. Alcohol flowed freely, cigars were lit, jokes flew, and loud conversations and laughter filled the room. The party reached its peak when Harley Quinn took the stage. She was the embodiment of grace and madness all at once. With a spark in her eyes and a devilish smile, she commanded attention, and the crowd went wild, shouting and whistling in delight. But amid this chaos, the Joker leaned in close to Monty and said, "I think it's time we had a little talk, in private." They moved backstage, away from prying eyes and the endless noise. While the rest of the bar indulged in revelry, the Joker and Harley began their own twisted game. With a cold, methodical precision, they peeled Monty's skin from heel to neck, as if stripping away his mask, revealing his betrayal and fear. Then, lifeless and trembling, they threw Monty out onto the stage. Naked and bloodied, he staggered and struggled to keep his balance. The bar fell silent, frozen in horror. No one could tear their eyes away from the gruesome scene. Monty's naked body, his eyes wide with fear and pain, until the Joker, with a mocking grin, grabbed a microphone and began to speak. "When they locked me up in Arkham, I thought I was leaving this city in reliable hands," he said, his voice soft but threatening. "But it seems I was wrong. I'm back to fix that mistake. And now I ask you, who's ready to help me take it all back?" The crowd was still, but no one dared to speak out. No one dared defy the Mad King of Gotham, standing before them with blood on his hands and a predatory smile. Johnny Frost, who had been watching the whole scene, felt a strange rush of excitement. He believed that something greater awaited him, that he could become someone significant by the Joker's side. The day in Gotham was as gloomy as ever, but for the Joker and Harley, it was time for another adventure. Instead of dealing with those who squandered his money, the Joker decided to stage a bank heist, a classic way to remind the city who was in charge. The Joker and Harley burst into the bank with an ease that made it feel like a casual stroll. They weren't aiming for violence. Their actions resembled a theatrical performance more than a robbery. Outside, Johnny Frost sat in the car, ready to take off at a moment's notice. But as he glanced at the clock, he realized that with the Joker, nothing ever went according to plan, because he didn't have any. When they finally emerged onto the street, Johnny was taken aback. He had expected gunfire and sirens, but the Joker calmly got into the car as if he had just finished a cup of coffee. "Funny, isn't it?" he chuckled. "Blackmail works better than bullets." The Joker sat at the edge of the dock, casually dangling a fishing line in the water, as if he were an ordinary angler enjoying the tranquility of the early morning. It was a surprisingly serene activity for someone like him, but therein lay the irony of the moment. He grinned, gazing at the bobber, seemingly deriving genuine pleasure from the simplicity of it all. Nearby, the sound of an approaching vehicle shattered the calm. Killer Croc arrived in a massive Jeep and forcefully ejected the Penguin from the truck bed. The Penguin stumbled, but managed to steady himself, irritation flashing across his face as he shook off the rough handling. When he spotted the Joker, his expression shifted to one of tension. Meeting him never promised anything good, especially not in this setting. "I'm angry, you know," the Joker began, feigning a deep sigh. "How is it that I lost my grip on this city?" The Penguin snorted, tilting his head with a familiar audacity. "Who said you ever had it, Joker?" The Joker slowly turned his head, and for a brief moment, a cold fire flickered in his eyes. He made a subtle hand gesture, and without a word, Croc stepped forward, encircling the Penguin's throat with his powerful hand. The Penguin gasped, clawing at Croc's formidable fingers in a futile attempt to escape. "And now let's get down to business," the Joker said, nodding at Johnny to show the Penguin the bag of money. "There's enough here to kick off the game. I want you to invest this money, multiply it tenfold, and do it quickly." The Joker's voice was calm, almost dismissive, but each word rang with the weight of a death sentence. "Are we clear?" The Penguin stared at the bag, the gravity of the situation sinking in. He understood he had no choice. The stakes were evident. Either he accepted the Joker's terms or faced a much grimmer fate. With a resigned sigh, he extended his hand, sealing the deal. In that moment, the Joker's manic grin widened, a sense of triumph washing over him. Gotham was his stage once more, and with each pawn he moved, he felt the thrill of control returning. The door of the restaurant swung open, and the Joker strutted in, a familiar wide grin plastered across his face. In his hands, he mimicked pistols, shooting his fingers in Tommy Piff-Paff, a mid-tier boss, as if playing a child's game. "Piff-Paff," he shouted, feigning joy at seeing an old friend. The sharp contrast between the innocent playfulness and the palpable threat in every movement of the Joker silenced the room. It felt as if the very air in the restaurant had thickened, and the tension was knife-edge sharp. Tommy tensed but attempted to maintain his composure, forcing a smile that never reached his eyes. The Joker took a seat across from him, crossing his legs and fixing Tommy with an unwavering gaze as he spoke as if they were longtime pals. Realizing that escape was futile, Tommy scrambled to justify himself. "You see, Joker, I didn't mean to take what belonged to you, but everyone else started, and I had to protect myself. I just wanted to give it back as soon as you returned." He hurriedly pulled out an envelope stuffed with cash from his pocket and offered it to the Joker. "Here, it's all there." The Joker accepted the envelope, peeking inside and nodding slightly. Approval flashed in his eyes as if he were genuinely pleased. "You know, Tommy, I'm a generous guy. Let's make a deal. You get 10% and your boys get 5. Everyone's happy, everyone's satisfied." Tommy exhaled in relief, eagerly agreeing to the arrangement. He was just grateful to be alive. As Johnny and the Joker exited the restaurant, it seemed they had navigated the encounter without bloodshed. But suddenly, the Joker stopped in his tracks and turned around. His hand slipped into his pocket, and he pulled out a real revolver. Without a moment's hesitation, he strode back into the room and emptied the entire magazine into Tommy. Tommy's henchmen froze, but none dared to move. Yet the spectacle didn't end there. Right before Johnny's eyes, the Joker inserted a single bullet into the revolver's chamber, spun it, and without a hint of hesitation, shoved the barrel into his mouth. He stared at Johnny as if testing his resolve and pulled the trigger. The loud click echoed through the dark street, but there was no gunshot. The Joker burst into laughter as if he had just heard the funniest joke. That night was merely the beginning. Tommy was the first casualty in a series of executions the Joker orchestrated in the coming days. One by one, Gotham's mid-tier bosses fell under his ruthless attacks, often without even grasping what had happened. He dispatched them with maniacal ease, leaving chaos and bloodshed in his wake. Johnny Frost was present for each of these violent acts, and he found himself reveling in it. He envisioned himself as part of the winning team, the ones who held Gotham by the throat, those who created madness and chaos while remaining on top. Gotham stood still, enveloped in the foreboding anticipation of an impending storm. Since the Joker's return, chaos gripped the streets, and no one knew when or where he would strike next. But one man seemed unfazed by it all: Harvey Dent, known as Two-Face. In the Joker's absence, he had risen to become one of the city's most influential crime lords, controlling the entire rackets. Dent believed his power extended far enough that he could ignore the Joker's presence. However, such arrogance did not go unnoticed. The Joker decided to unleash real chaos throughout the city. His men targeted locations protected by Dent's underlings, raiding bars and casinos, smashing drug dens and underground warehouses. Everywhere Dent's influence was considered untouchable. Gotham erupted in disorder, with the Joker reveling in the spectacle of destruction at its center. But he took it a step further by arranging a meeting with the Riddler. The Riddler, always fond of playing with mysteries and puzzles, produced a mysterious briefcase containing something Harvey Dent desperately needed: No one knew what was inside, but it was clear that if Dent wanted it back, he would have to confront the Joker. Harvey attempted to maintain his composure. He negotiated a meeting on neutral ground at the Gotham Zoo where they could discuss business among the cages of wild animals. Dent saw himself as the Joker's equal and believed they could reach a mutually beneficial agreement, but he was gravely mistaken. Without preamble, the Joker ordered Harvey to kneel and beg for forgiveness, treating him not as one of Gotham's power players, but as a petty thief. To the Joker, Two-Face was nothing more than a subordinate who had strayed from his master in his absence. Harvey frowned and refused. His men and the Joker stood at a standoff, hands on their weapons, ready for a fight. Dent was confident they were on equal footing, viewing it as just another power play. But he could not fathom the depth of the Joker's trap. In the silence, a hoarse growl echoed, and from the shadows emerged one of the zoo's gorillas, clutching an assault rifle. It was so unexpected that no one had time to react before the gunfire erupted. Harvey's men fell, unable to draw their weapons. When the smoke cleared, it became evident that the gorilla was a ruse. Under the costume was Harley Quinn, grinning as she wielded the automatic weapon. The scene turned into a nightmare for Dent. He stood alone, surrounded by the bodies of his men, and at that moment, he realized his days of independent rule were over. The Joker approached, the smile fading from his face as he leaned in like a predator toward Harvey. "You thought you could be my equal. Fool! The king has returned, and you will serve me once more." Harvey bowed his head, acknowledging his defeat, and from that moment on, he returned to serving his true master, the King of Gotham, who tolerated neither disobedience nor weakness. Johnny Frost believed he had grown closer to the Joker, that he was no longer just an underling, but someone special. All this time, he had been by the Joker's side, witnessing the chaos he unleashed, and he began to think he understood him. Johnny even grew fond of the madness that seemed to follow the Joker like a faithful shadow. But what he had seen was merely the tip of the iceberg. The Joker was capable of horrors that Johnny could hardly imagine. He did not comprehend that to the Joker, death was a punchline, and destruction was the highest form of art. As the Joker's chaos reached its zenith, the one who had always shadowed the mad clown entered the fray. Batman. Harvey Dent, realizing he had lost control and understanding that the city was about to be engulfed in hell, turned to Batman, pleading for him to stop the Joker before it was too late. The Joker knew Batman was on his trail. Once, while approaching Harley Quinn, he felt the ground slipping from beneath him. The hunt had begun, and he was now the prey. In search of refuge, he and Johnny rushed to the slaughterhouse, where they hoped to find assistance and protection from Croc. But what they discovered there shocked them. Instead of the grim figures of Croc and his men, the bodies of the criminals hung from hooks, mingled with the carcasses of animals. Batman had already been there. He was always a step ahead. The Joker refused to surrender, but he and Johnny had nowhere to run. No matter where they went, Batman was already there. The Joker fled, setting fire to everything in his path, and soon tears streamed down his cheeks. These were not tears of despair. They were hysteria, laughter and tears mingling into one. To Johnny, it all seemed like a mad performance, and he laughed. On the bridge, the Joker suddenly stopped and struck Johnny with a forceful blow, knocking the breath out of him. He drew a gun, and in that moment, all the pent-up hatred within him erupted. The Joker unleashed everything he had thought about Johnny from the beginning. No charm, just plain obviousness. Stupid, dull, and dreary. Did you think you were important? You're nothing, a little worm, a disgrace and a pitiful sight. The Joker looked at him as if he were nothing more than an empty space, and at that moment, Johnny realized how deeply he had erred in thinking the Joker considered him something greater. But before the Joker could finish him off, Batman appeared. Without a second thought, the Joker used Johnny as a human shield, pressing the gun to his temple, launching into his sarcastic tirade aimed at Batman. He mocked Batman's image, trying to humiliate him. You, all terrible and gloomy, in your black suit, but that handsome chin isn't hiding. Why? What are you trying to achieve? The Joker cackled, tilting his head to the side, waiting for the usual silence in response. But this time, Batman broke the silence. He calmly replied, "To laugh at you." That was the final straw. The Joker suddenly lost control. In a fit of rage, he shot Johnny in the neck, tossing him aside like a discarded puppet. Johnny collapsed, blood quickly soaking his shirt in a crimson hue, but he was still alive. He crawled, trying to comprehend how everything had spiraled out of control and why he had been betrayed. Meanwhile, the Joker and Batman engaged in a brutal confrontation. As the Joker battled Batman, Johnny crawled across the bridge, dying and reflecting on his life. He still considered himself at the top of the world, and here's what he saw from that pinnacle. He saw the disease that had infected this city, a sickness that had emerged long before the city itself. And the name of this disease was the Joker. And there was no cure for this affliction. No cure at all. Only Batman.